Fifth, major products saw stable supply and demand and enjoyed notable strengths. In 2022, China's imports and exports of mechanic and electrical products reached 20.66 trillion yuan, up by 2.5% and taking up 49.1% of the total. Exports of solar batteries, lithium batteries, and automobile grew by 67.8%, 86.7%, and 82.2% respectively. During the same period, exports of labor-intensive products totaled 4.28 trillion yuan, up by 8.9%, taking up 17.9%. Exports of suitcases and bags, shoes and toys grew by 32.6%, 24.4% and 9.1% respectively. Imports of energy products, including crude oil, natural gas, and coal, totaled 3.19 trillion yuan, up by 40.9%, accounting for 17.6% of the total import. Imports of agricultural products totaled 1.57 trillion yuan, up by 10.8%, and taking up 8.7% of the total. The year 2022 is a very important year for the party and the country. We held the 20th CPC National Congress and draw a blueprint for building a modern socialist country. Despite multiple pressures, our foreign trade demonstrated strong resilience, and we have made sound performance despite difficulties. This is attributed to the strong leadership of the Party Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and also attributed to the efforts of all sectors. In the past year, we have been implementing the guiding principles of the CPC National Congress, and we have ensured the stability of foreign trade. We have improved the quality of foreign trade and contributed to a stable economic performance. In the past year, we saw breakthrough in foreign trade. Volume and quality of foreign trade have been improved. Going forward, we still face a volatile external environment with increasing downward pressure from the external environment. We still face multiple difficulties and challenges in foreign trade. We also need to see that the fundamentals of the Chinese economy remain unchanged and will have an upward trajectory. So we have confidence to continue to develop our foreign trade this year. And today, we're holding a customs work conference guided by Xi Jinping's thought on socialism as China's characteristics for a new era. We will implement the two upholds and implement the deployment of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council, and work together and make more efforts to stabilize and the foreign trade and improve its structure to contribute to Chinese modernization. And now the floor is open to questions. Thank you. Please announce your media affiliation before asking questions. With Phoenix TV, we have seen that last year we've seen steady growth in foreign trade. What do you think are the driving forces for growth in foreign trade now? What are your expectations for this year's trend? Thank you for your question. In 2022, China's foreign trade overcame multiple challenges beyond expectations and grew steadily on a high basis of the first half, exceeded 40 trillion yuan for the first time, contributing to stable economic performance. We believe that currently major forces driving growth in foreign trade are as follows. First, export continued to meet market demand. Our main products have strong competitive edge. By market, in 2022, China's exports to ASEAN, the EU, and other major trading partners maintained relatively fast growth. Emerging markets are explored at a faster pace. Exports to Belt and Road partners grew by 20%, driving 6.4 percentage points of growth in the total exports. Exports to Africa and Latin America grew by 14.8% and 14.1%. By products, in 2022, industrial goods exports grew by 9.9%, driving 9.4 percentage points of total growth. Exports of labor-intensive products maintained fast growth. Exports of solar batteries, lithium batteries, electric vehicles, and other green and low-carbon products grew by over 60%, marking a rapid growth of new driving forces in exports. According to the latest data, China accounts for 14.7% of international export market, ranking the first in the world for 14 consecutive years. Second, imports are well underpinned with tremendous potential of domestic demand. In 2022, China has taken into account developments in and outside China, coordinated COVID response and economic and social development, and coordinated development and security. We achieved steady economic development. Major indicators, including value additive industries above the designated level and investment in fixed assets, continue to grow, providing strong support for rising import. In 2022, China's imports of intermediate products grew by 7.5%, driving 5.9 percentage points of growth in imports. Commodity prices in international markets remained high. This has also contributed to the growth of imports. Third, foreign trade enjoyed strong policy support and strong internal driving forces. In 2022, the Chinese government rolled out a package of policies and follow-up measures to stabilize the economy. Those concerning foreign trade included ensuring smooth trade, enhancing financial and tax support, encouraging the development of new forms of business, and supporting enterprises in securing orders and expanding markets, and further enhance trade security and facilitation. In 2022, the number of companies involved in foreign trade grew by 5.6%. Private, foreign invested, and state-owned enterprises fully leveraged their strengths and achieved steady performance in imports and exports. On the trend going forward, as I have mentioned, China's foreign trade continues to face many difficulties and challenges. Meanwhile, this year, the Chinese economy is expected to resume an upward trajectory. There are also many favorable conditions for foreign trade. We have solid underpinning for stabilizing the scale and bettering the structure of foreign trade.
Daily economic news. We noticed that last year, the private enterprises' share of foreign trade exceeded 50%. So what are the highlights in this regard?
Thank you. Private enterprises development is one of the priorities for CPC Central Committee and the State Council. Last year, our policies supporting growth have released the vitality of all kinds of market entities. According to GACC, in 2022, the number of private enterprises involved in foreign trade was 510,000, with a trade volume of 21.4 trillion yuan, up by 12.9%. First, the share of private enterprises in the total trade volume has increased, playing a significant role in stabilizing foreign trade. The private enterprise status as the top entity of foreign trade has been consolidated, serving as a stabilizer of foreign trade. In 2022, the share of private enterprises reached 50.9%, 2.3 percentage points higher than the previous year, exceeding 50% for the first time. It contributed 80.8% of the growth of foreign trade. Second, the private sector continued to enjoy a competitive edge in trade with long-standing trading partners, which it also vigorously expanded while also expanding emerging markets. In 2022, the private sector scored a double-digit growth in trade with top three partners, namely ASEAN, the EU, and the US, growing by 27.6%, 12.6%, and 10.6% respectively. During the same period, their imports and exports with BRICS countries, Latin America, and the 5 countries in Central Asia rose by 22.1, 14.5, and 55.1%. Third, the exports of mechanic and electrical products and imports of agricultural products grew fast. In terms of exports, in 2022, private enterprises' exports of mechanic and electrical products reached 7 trillion yuan, up by 15.3%. Among electronic components, electrical engineering materials, and automobile parts grew by 22, 42.5, and 19% respectively. In terms of imports, we have seen that the imports of cotton, medical materials, and pharmaceuticals, basic organic chemical products grew by 25.3, 15.3, and 8.7 respectively. Fourth, private enterprises in Central and Western China beamed with greater vitality. In 2022, such enterprises' imports and exports grew by 21.5 and 21.2% respectively, accounting for 20.1% of the total volume of private enterprises, up by 1.4 percentage points compared with the previous year. Thank you.
CCTV News. Pilot free trade zones and free trade ports are the trailblazers of opening up. What did the Customs Authority do to promote the development of FTZs and Hainan Free Trade Port last year? Thank you for the question. The development of pilot free trade zones and the free trade ports are the important decisions of the Party Central Committee. Following the strategy to upgrade pilot free trade zones and the requirement to accelerate the building of Hainan Free Trade Port, we deepened reform and innovation and accelerated institutional opening up of rules, regulations, management, and standards, and supported the development of FTZs and the Hainan Free Trade Port. We have focused on the innovation of institutions and explored applicable and widely adaptable rules. In 2022, relevant customs authorities at all levels filed 33 innovative measures, including the management of off-island duty-free products in Hainan Free Trade Port, and we evaluated the performance of 53 innovative measures, including the regulation of bonded processing trade and data copy of international shipping vessels. They were applied nationwide. In 2022, our pilot free trade zones saw 7.5 trillion yuan of foreign trade, up by 14.5%, of which exports registered 3.3 trillion yuan, up by 18.1%, and import 4.2 trillion yuan, up by 11.8%. On supporting the building of Hainan Free Trade Port, guided by the principle that sound regulation is the precondition for opening up, we formulated the regulations of the Hainan Free Trade Port, continued to promote duty-free policies, accelerated the expansion of the pilot import and the export policies, and released a list of certified companies. We also followed our schedules tightly and introduced a list of key tasks. The past 2 years saw the rapid development of the Hainan Free Trade Port. After exceeding 100 billion yuan in 2021, in 2022, we hit another new record, reaching 209.5 billion yuan, up by 36.8%, of which export 72.26 billion yuan, up by 120%, and import 128.69 billion yuan, up by 12.8%. Next question. Sky News. We noticed that COVID-19 has now been classified as managed as Class B infectious diseases. So, what did the customs do to ensure effective containment of infections at the port and the land ports? Since the outbreak of COVID-19, customs authorities has followed the decisions of the Party Central Committee and the State Council. We have prevented infections and import of cases at ports. We carried out science-based and targeted containment measures to prevent the infection of personnel, goods, and the environment, making important contribution to our success in containing COVID-19. After the adjustment of COVID response measures, following the instructions of the State Council Joint Response Mechanism, we have carried out relevant work in a steady, orderly, and science-based manner. First, we improved the relevant quarantine and inspection measures at the border ports. Following the decisions of the State Council Joint Response Mechanism, we made the decision that no COVID test will be required for inbound travelers, and the nuclear acid test within 48 hours before arrival will be included in the customs health condition declaration. At the same time, regular health measures at the ports, including test of body temperature, have been effectively enforced. And on the other hand, we have improved our measures for the import of goods. There will be no random testing and preventive sterilization measures for the import of cold chain products. But at the same time, we worked closely with competent departments of export countries, and we urged them to implement the guidelines of the FAO. As for the non-cold chain products, there will be no risk assessment and the preventive sterilization measures on these products. Since the adjustment of the COVID response measures, the customs clearance have maintained stability and good order. Thank you. Next question. CNBC, I have two questions. First, about the development of cross-border e-commerce. So, my question is there any plan of purchase of major Chinese goods by any country or region, and what's your prospect for cross-border e-commerce this year? And another question, what's your prospect or forecast for the import of Chinese goods by North America and some other major regions? And will there be a decline of demand from Southeast Asia or Europe and other partners? Thank you for the question. First, let me share with you some data about cross-border e-commerce. In 2022, the trade of cross-border e-commerce registered 2.1 trillion yuan, up by 9.8%, of which export 1.55 trillion yuan, up by 11.7%, import 0.56 trillion yuan. Recent years have seen rapid growth of cross-border e-commerce, and the government released a number of support measures. We can see that the potential of cross-border e-commerce will be further unlocked. Thank you. China News Service. We noticed that ASEAN has been China's largest trading partner for 3 years in a row, and the trade with ASEAN countries grew by 15%. What drives the rapid growth, and what is the assessment by the GACC?
Thank you for your question. The year 2022 was the first year of China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. The two sides enjoyed even closer trade ties, with a total volume of 6.52 trillion yuan, up by 15%. Exports reached 3.79 trillion yuan, up by 21.7%. Imports reached 2.73 trillion yuan, up by 6.8%. During the same period, ASEAN's share in China's foreign trade went up by 1 percentage point to 15.5% and continued to be China's largest trading partner. Specifically, the growth was mainly driven by the following factors. First, RCEP took effect and delivered trade creation effect, promoting closer industrial chain cooperation. 1 year into RCEP, its policy dividend continued to release, enabling closer trade ties among countries in the region. ASEAN is an important trading partner of China in RCEP. In 2022, China's trade with ASEAN took up 50.3% of the total volume with RCEP members. Imports of intermediate products reached 4.36 trillion yuan, up by 16.2%, accounting for 67% of the total volume of China's trade with ASEAN. Second, infrastructure connectivity was further enhanced, making it easier for trade exchanges. As the international land sea corridor made solid progress, China and ASEAN goods had smoother channels of flow. Various ways of transportation saw coordinated development, among which railway grew rapidly. In 2022, China's trade with ASEAN by rail, waterways, and air grew by 197.6%, 26.7% and 15.5% respectively. Especially in late 2021, the China-Laos Railway was completed and opened to traffic, providing new driving forces for China and ASEAN countries along the route to further deepen trade cooperation. In 2022, in goods transported by railway, the proportion of those through the China-Laos Railway went up to 44.7%. Its contribution to the growth of China's imports and exports with ASEAN through railway was over 60%. Third, agricultural products cooperation was deepened and drove the increase of imports. In recent years, China accelerated importing agricultural products from ASEAN countries, improved quarantine procedures for key products, including agricultural products. Fresh durian from Vietnam, longan from Cambodia, and passion fruit from the Laos have met quarantine requirements. In 2022, China imported 246.86 billion yuan of agricultural products from ASEAN, accounting for 15.7% of imported agricultural products in the same period, up by 1.4 percentage points than the previous year. China and ASEAN relations enjoy sound foundation and tremendous potential for growth. Going forward, the two sides have broad areas of cooperation, mutually inclusive development strategies, and smooth trade exchanges. As the two sides continue to enhance trade and investment liberalization and facilitation, China's two-way trade with ASEAN will score bigger and new progress. Thank you.
Japan economic news. We have followed closely the trade between China and Russia. Please share with us relevant data in 2022 and how the GACC assess the bilateral trade. Thank you for the question. About the statistics of China-Russia trade, in 2022, our export and import to Russia reached 1.28 trillion yuan, accounting for 3% of our total foreign trade. As for the size, in 2022, the trade maintained steady growth, and the bilateral trade reached a new high. Thank you. Next question. South Daily News. 1 year into RCEP's dividend has continued to be unlocked. Could you share with us more about the trade between China and RCEP members? So what has the GACC done to promote the implementation of RCEP and what has been achieved? Thank you for the question. January the 1st this year marked the one-year anniversary of the official coming into force of the RCEP. Over the past year, we ensured high-quality implementation of RCEP, releasing a number of policy dividends and promoted regional economic integration. According to customs statistics, in 2022, China's trade with other 14 RCEP countries stood at 12.95 trillion yuan, up by 7.5%, accounting for 30.8% of our total foreign trade. As for the features, first, the steady increase of trade has been registered. We can see that the policy dividends has boosted inter-regional trade. From first to the fourth quarter, our trade with RCEP countries accounted for 30.4%, 30.5%, 30.7%, and 31.4% of our total trade at the same period. Second is vibrant trade flows. In 2022, China's trade with 8 RCEP countries registered double-digit growth, including over 20% growth with Indonesia, Singapore, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos. Our trade with the ROK is the largest among RCEP countries, reaching 2.41 trillion yuan, up by 3.2%. Third is stronger industrial cooperation. In 2022, China's trade of intermediary goods with RCEP countries stood at 8.7 trillion yuan, up by 8.5%, accounting for 67.2% of our total trade with RCEP countries. By the item of goods, the trade of machineries and labor-intensive goods went up by 13.2% and 20.7%, of which electronic components up by 15%, batteries for 50.3%, and cars 71.6%. Our import of machineries, coal, metal mines, and other consumer products accounted for 46.2%, 10.4%, and 10.2%. The imports of oil and gas also registered rapid growth. Fourth is strong performance of private companies. In 2022, our private companies' trade with RCEP countries went up by 17.4%, accounting for 50.6% of our trade with RCEPs, up by 4.3%. Following the decisions of the CPC Central Committee and the State Council, we have ensured sound performance of relevant work. First, we worked with the Ministry of Commerce and other 5 departments to introduce the guidelines on high-quality implementation of RCEP, with specifically 16 tasks in 3 aspects, and carried out special evaluation on the implementation of relevant policies. Third, focused on RCEP-related inspection and quarantine measures. We improved and upgraded relevant regulation and system to streamline the process, improve efficiency, and lower the cost. Third, we worked with businesses to help them seize relevant opportunities. We better communicated the policies and standards by training and a number of measures, including the translation of relevant rules, to help them have a better understanding of relevant policies. And also, we released the policy interpretation of RCEP countries through our 12360 WeChat account and other portal website. And we also provided sound services for companies through a number of facilitation measures. Thank you. Next question. The report of the 20th CPC National Congress stated that Belt and Road Cooperation has become a well-received international public goods and international cooperation platform. So what are the highlights of our trade with these countries last year?
Thank you for your question. This year is the 10th anniversary of the initiative, and China has been enjoying closer trade ties with these countries with an annual growth on average of 8.6%. In 2022, the total volume was 13.83 trillion yuan, up by 19.4% year-on-year, 11.7 percentage points higher than the general growth, among which exports reached 7.89 trillion yuan, up by 20%. Imports reached 5.94 trillion yuan, up by 18.7%. There are mainly the following highlights. First, the share of these countries in China's foreign trade continued to rise. In 2022, China's scale of imports and exports with relevant countries hit a record high, accounting for 32.9% of the total, 3.2 percentage points higher than the year before. Compared with 2013, when the initiative was first put forward, the number grew by 7.9 percentage points. Second, China's trade with 5 countries in Central Asia, the UAE and Saudi Arabia and other trading partners have grown fast. In 2022, China's trade with the 5 Central Asian countries, the UAE and Saudi Arabia, grew by 45.4%, 42.1% and 37.2% respectively. During the same period, our exports and imports with ASEAN reached 6.52 trillion yuan, up by 15%, accounting for 47.1% of China's trade volume with Belt and Road partners. Third, the industrial and supply chains are increasingly complementary. In 2022, China's export of intermediate products to Belt and Road partners reached 4.44 trillion yuan, up by 23.9%, accounting for 56.3% of the total volume of China's exports to relevant countries, among which exports of textiles, electrical parts, basic organic chemical products and automobile parts grew by 14.5%, 21.1%, 31.3% and 24.6% respectively. During the same period, imports of energy products and agricultural products grew steadily with a total volume of 2.46 trillion yuan and 370.41 billion yuan, up by 58.8% and 13.4% respectively. Fourth, the vitality of trade between private enterprises and relevant countries has been further released. In 2022, the volume went up by 26.7%, accounting for 56.8% of the total volume of China's trade with these countries, 3.3 percentage points higher than the previous year. In 2022, the GACC studied and implemented the guiding principles of the important speech of General Secretary Xi Jinping at the Third Belt and Road Cooperation meeting, took active steps to promote trade facilitation and security in a bid to promote high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. First, we have actively expanded imports of quality agricultural products and food items from Belt and Road partners. In 2022, we worked with relevant countries to sign 73 customs, quarantine, and inspection cooperation documents. 60 more agricultural products and food items met quarantine requirements or have already been traded. Second, we prioritized Belt and Road partners in promoting authorized economic operators, mutual recognition, and single-window cooperation in international trade, enhancing trade facilitation. Third, we provided better customs services to China-Europe Railway Express. China and Kazakhstan's speed clearance project started trial Alatol Pass and Horgos Railway Port on the border of the two countries. Such project with Belarus is moving forward at a faster pace for smoother trade. Going forward, the customs will focus on promoting high-quality development of Belt and Road cooperation, practice smart customs, smart borders, smart connections, expand the scope and depth of customs cooperation with relevant countries and regions, and make greater contributions to promoting policy communication, facility connectivity, and smooth trade. Thank you. Any other questions?
Red Star News. Since last year, the government has put in place a package policy and follow-up measures to stabilize the economy. What has the GACC done in ensuring stability of foreign trade and improving its quality. Thank you for the question. In 2022, in keeping with General Secretary Xi Jinping's important instructions and following the principle of effective COVID response, stable economy, and secure development, we coordinated COVID response at the border ports and the need to promote steady growth of foreign trade, and effectively delivered the policy package for stable growth and follow-up measures. As for what we have done, first, on policy implementation, solid efforts were made in delivering the series of policies for stable growth and foreign trade, including 10 measures for stable and high-quality foreign trade, 6 supportive measures for SMEs, and 7 measures to reduce business cost. Customs at all levels worked earnestly to implement these policies in light of local conditions and the need of companies. We worked together to introduce 1,300 specific measures to support companies, protect market entities, improve clearance environment, ensure smooth cross-border logistics, enhance assessment and evaluation, and support the stability and security of industry and supply chains to ensure the steady growth of foreign trade. Second, with regard to stable market entities, we implemented the long-term mechanism to support and serve businesses. We introduced a number of measures, including the tax guarantee mechanism and the diversified mechanism of source of guarantors. We also supported quality and leading companies to fully benefit from tax reduction and other supportive measures. We supported more companies to become AEO enterprises and promoted mutual recognition of AEO so that companies will get equal convenience at home and abroad. In 2022, 365 companies have been registered as AEO companies. We also enhanced IPR protection at the customs levels to boost business innovation. The addition of 21,000 IPR protection cases were filed, up by 21%. Third, we continued to improve business environment at border ports. We carried out a special campaign to introduced 10 supporting measures. We further promoted single window arrangement to reduce the time of clearance. We also increased personnel and resources input to improve the uploading and unloading of goods. We also worked to ensure safe and smooth clearance at all links and further facilitated import and export. In December 2022, the average clearance time for import was 32.02 hours and export 1.03 hours, down by 67.1% and 91.7% compared with 2017 when the policy was launched. And fourth, we have continued to foster new drivers of foreign trade. We better communicated our policies regarding cross-border e-commerce, promoted central warehousing for returned import goods, and the B2B model of export supervision. We supported companies in building overseas warehouses to facilitate the growth and improvement of quality of cross-border foreign trade. In 2022, our foreign trade through cross-border e-commerce registered at 2.11 trillion yuan, up by 9.8%, of which export 1.55 trillion yuan, up by 11.7%, import 0.65 trillion yuan, up by 4.9%. We will continue to follow closely the decision of the 20th National Congress of the CPC, continue to implement relevant policies, including that of the Central Work Conference, to promote steady growth of foreign trade and contribute to steady economic growth. Thank you. I thank our spokesperson and I thank all the guests.